welcome. Glad to have you guys here. If I sound a little loud, I'll try and not talk too, not to blast your ears out, but it's kind of an empty room, and you might be wondering, well, why do we do it in here? Well, we wanted to make sure that we can record this for future sessions for people who can't be here in person and stuff like that. Just as well as currently we don't have a working projector down in the Hillside room, and this stuff's just better if I have a screen for you guys to look at while we go through things. So that said, I would like to encourage you, if you're not sitting near somebody right now, to make sure that you kind of gravitate a little bit closer if you can. If you've got somebody you want to move towards, that's okay to do, because we're going to have sometimes we're going to invite you to talk to each other a little bit and share some things, collaborate a little bit. It just would be really good if you have somebody that you're nearby. I know we've all been social distancing for a couple of years now, and maybe you're just used to keeping your space, but it's also good to talk with people once in a while. Your kids, even if you hear some noises or whatnot, your kids are in good hands this morning. We've got a good group of volunteers helping out, so just feel free to relax and just kind of ignore them for a while, which maybe is a relief on a Saturday morning. If you are not familiar with this building, if you haven't been here very often, the restrooms are straight back. You just sort of walk out those doors and keep going down the hallway. You'll see signs for the restrooms. As I said, we'll be doing some different chatting and so on, and I also provided you with that handout, and I really want to encourage you to use that handout as much as you can. Take lots of notes. There's lots of white space as well as lines for you to fill in stuff. That's there for you to kind of write down your questions, your thoughts, your ideas, and use that as a space, especially when it comes to collaborating with each other. And if you are watching this after the fact, if you're catching this recording later on, just invite you, or encourage you rather, to make sure that you watch this with somebody or share it with somebody so that you can bounce ideas off of them. That might be a really good thing to have the opportunity to talk about what we go through today. Otherwise, I want to start us off with a prayer, and then we're going to get going. Lord, you call us to be parents. And calling us to be parents is a big calling. And sometimes it's very difficult. It's very frustrating. Sometimes we just wonder, how are we going to get through 18 years of this young person's life and actually bring out a functional human being? But you wouldn't call us to this if you didn't plan to equip us and strengthen us for the journey. And so just ask that as we work together this morning, that our time together would help each of the parents in this room feel more equipped to do what you've asked them to do. And that your Holy Spirit would fill their lives and their homes so that they can be the best parents that you've made them to be. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to start a little bit with just a little example of what life might be like in your house on a day-to-day basis.
After all I do for you, I cook for you, I clean for you, I do your homework half the time, but I don't tell Dad. If you don't set the table, I'm going crazy, Mom, on you. Day in the life of a modern-day mom. Guys, come on, gotta get up. School. Let's go. Get dressed. Come on, come downstairs. Come on, eat something healthy. Go out to the organic garden and pick out something healthy. Okay, go brush your teeth. Bring me your toothbrush. Let me make sure it's wet. Okay, have a good day at school, Jacob. Okay, Jacob comes home from school. Hey, Jacob, how was your day at school? Did you make any friends? I didn't get a call from the principal today, so it's probably a good day. How was school? Do you have any homework? Now cue the big meltdown, right? For the child who holds it together at school, but saves a meltdown for usually mom, because here's what kids know. My mommy will always love me. Dad, not so sure, right? Now we got to go place. Now it's homework time, right? We stand behind our child, right? And we're like, you know what? If you would just focus, you would be done in 45 minutes instead of it taking 3 hours. Now it's dinner time. Dad's getting upset. Jacob, you will sit still at the dinner table. We are going to enjoy dinner together as a family. Everybody's losing their appetite. Now, it's bedtime. It's bath time. Mom, can we talk? Listen, if you are not asleep in 18 seconds, I'm going to take away everything you own. Jesus loves you. Good night. Right? Now, how many of you do morning routine with it? Gotta get it, right? Would you do that? Do your kids ever jump out of bed and say, Mom, listen, I can tell you're in a hurry. What do you need me to do first? Right? Should I get dressed? What do you want? No. And they're not rejecting you or your authority, they're rejecting our anxiety. Listen, if you're one of those moms who does that whole thing of like, after all I do for you, that's your issue. Stop. Because your kids are never going to wake up one morning and say, hey, Mom, listen, talk to my brother and sister. We've determined you do way too much for us. So we're just going to start stepping up. And they're not going to volunteer. Okay? People will not respect you until you respect yourself.
All right. I want you to take a minute and on that sheet there, list some of the times of day that are most challenging for you. Maybe take about, 72 seconds or so to write some things down, and then turn to somebody who's near you, share with a neighbor what you wrote down. See, especially if you have anything in common with a neighbor as far as times of day that become really stressful and challenging. While you're thinking about that stuff, shout out to our video producer, Anthony. He's doing awesome. I love the fact that I don't have to worry as much about this stuff because he worries about it all for me. That's pretty awesome. Okay, some times of the day that are most stressful, right? Hopefully you've had a chance maybe just to chat a little bit with each other. Any common times of the day that are really stressful for you guys? How about is morning, getting ready in the morning, a stressful time of the day for you? All right. How about when the kids come home from school? Does that become a difficult time of day? Okay, all right. Bedtime. Oh, wow, yeah, getting the kids to bed. Okay, so, that's pretty typical that those transitional times of day are when we kind of feel most stressed out. So hopefully we can address some of those things with some interesting tactics here as we go through. But first I want to share with you just a word for parents. This is really, God's word says a lot to parents, has a lot to say to us about, how this whole parenting journey works. For instance, it says, be faithful even to the point of death, and I'll give you life as a victor's crown. So, just keep working at it, and, it's stressful, it's difficult and frustrating, but I believe there's got to be a special place in heaven for parents of challenging children, right? But really, any God-fearing parent can look forward to a crown of life. So there's hope, right? When you die, you won't be a parent anymore, or you will be, but not in the way that you're struggling with it right now. Okay, maybe that's not the one I'm looking for, but how about this? Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. James' first readers might have been thinking about persecution, but honestly, I think he might have been thinking about parenting. James, this is Jesus' brother, right? So his older brother was perfect, and then the rest of them, can you imagine what that household was like? He started it. No, he didn't. He's Jesus. Oh, you're right. In your struggle against sin, you haven't yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood, unless you're a parent and your kid maybe once in a while hauls off and, closets you or something like that, and then maybe you have shed some blood. But you're still here today, which means your kids haven't killed you yet. Okay, well, how about this one? Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Look at all the things that he says in there. Now, this is a general passage. It has to do with a lot of different aspects of our Christian life. But it's true that before God, you and your children stand side by side as beloved. And he's calling on you to bear with each other and forgive each other. So there's a need to say to my children, yeah, you've been rotten today. This has really been a hard day. But I'm still going to love you and forgive you. And I'm going to work towards letting the peace of Christ rule in this home, and I'm going to be thankful. I'm going to be thankful that I get this challenge, that I get to do this, that I get to be a parent, because it's also joyful, right? It's an amazing journey. You get to watch children grow into the person that God made them to be. There's a lot of great things happening when you spend time parenting. It is a good thing. So I hope that that's a little bit encouraging, and we're going to look at a little bit more of Scripture in a minute as to how does God really set an example, a model for us to follow as we try to love our children the way that He has loved us. First, I just want to share a little bit of background on myself, just so you kind of know where I come from experientially and so on. I'm a father of 2 boys, ages 15 and 13, and so if you're sitting in here and you've got a girl and you're like, okay, so you have no idea. And the truth is, I only know a little bit about parenting girls, mostly from being an uncle to some nieces. And so my experience with parenting girls is, pat them on the head, say you're really cute and sweet, and then now you go, and I don't have to worry about you anymore, right? So that's what you do with your girls, right? Okay, no, I'm sure there's more to it than that. But I have successfully gotten my 15 and 13-year-old to the age that they are, and they're fairly responsible. One of them is actually even helping out with the child care. I do have a master's degree in family education, and so a lot of the things that I get to share, were gained kind of from reading a ton of books, which is part of what you have to do to get that. But I'm also a certified Love and Logic trainer, so that's why we called this Discipline with Love and Logic. That's actually a specific program, and we're going to see a few videos from their program that they've given us permission to use. But I've taught that course several times, and if after the fact here you say, I'd really love to do more about that Love and Logic thing, talk to me because we might get a group together. It's usually about a 6-session course. Also, I like to say that I'm a professional thief, and what I mean by that is that when it comes to presenting stuff like this, see, all of us guys who ever go and present anything like this anywhere, we've had guests come here before, we all steal from each other, right? Like, oh, he said that really cool thing, and then we never give each other credit. So if I say something and later on you're like, hey, wait a second, I'm reading this book, and I remember Brandon saying that from the front of church, I probably got it from him, or he got it from me. Okay, so just saying that just in case you're like, I think I've heard this before. Yeah, you probably have. All right, let's take a look at 5 quick tips to try today. See, I want to give you some quick things you can do today before we get into the higher level kind of like, okay, what are some of the things I got to be thinking about, or a philosophy I've got to adopt, or just a mentality or whatever. I want to give you things you can walk out of this door this morning and say, I'm going to try that right now. But these tips especially are valuable because a lot of our discipline doesn't, the situations where we have to discipline doesn't start with a child just saying, I'm going to be rebellious today. Yeah, you know what, today I'm going to live my sinful life and embrace it, right? I'm just going to just totally grab onto that. Most of the time, and that's not true for us either, right? You don't wake up one morning and be like, I know God says like these 10 commandments, but like, man, today I'm just not doing that. I'm doing my own thing today. Like, that's not how sin often starts. Sin often starts with us being set up for temptation in some way. We kind of break down to the temptation, and then look at the first sin, right? Eve didn't wake up and say, today I'm going to go eat from that fruit of that tree. No, she was set up for it, right? She shows up to the tree, there's a talking snake, and rather than saying, talking snake, bad idea, let's get out of here, she just sits there and listens. And Adam, who's standing next to her, says, talking snake, let's see how this plays out. And then she falls into temptation. The very next sin recorded in the Bible is after, is in their children, the very next sinners, Cain and Abel, right? Cain didn't wake up and go, today I'm going to kill my brother. Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Instead, he had situations that led to him falling into that. By the way, Cain and Abel, the first 2 parents were raising 2 boys. One of them killed the other one. So if you're afraid, you're thinking, are my kids going to turn out okay? hey, if you're doing better than a 50% murderer rate in your family, you're probably on the right track, okay? Or at least you're not the worst parents in history, we'll call it that. All right, but Cain, he didn't wake up saying, I'm going to be rebellious and murderous. He started with a progression of falling into sin. The same is true with your kids. So these tips are going to help kind of set your kids up for the success by building relationship and confidence and thinking. So let's take a look at some. First of all, this one is great. Asking your kids this question, hey, if you were in my shoes, if you pick up your kids from school and you ask them, how was your day at school, right? That might, you sometimes get good, especially if you've got teenagers. That's where I'm at right now. It was good. And maybe if they're little kids, they'll just rattle off a lot of stuff, but you might think, oh, how can I dig a little deeper and get a little more out of them? But maybe start by jump-starting their thinking with this question. If you were in my shoes, share with your kids a struggle that you had that day. Hey, I was facing this situation today. I was at Walmart, and I was going to go to checkout, and I'm walking there, and I've got my hands are full because I didn't think to grab a basket, and I get close to the checkout line, and I'm thinking like I can't carry this stuff anymore. I'm just about to get there, and then some other person came, and they just pushed their cart right in front of me, and they cut me right off, and they didn't even look at me. Like it was like they didn't even know I was there. Hey, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? And it's amazing. You can ask your 3-year-old this. They'll come up with all kinds of ideas. You can ask your 7-year-old. You can ask your 12-year-old. You can ask your 17-year-old. And they'll all have different answers, right? But here's what's great is that you're jump-starting their thinking, for one, but number two, you're building relationship. You're giving them the opportunity to see into your world and understand that you're a human being too who struggles with stuff. And now the two of you have a chance to sort of talk about how to solve interpersonal problems in your life. Now, I would advise against something like, if you were in my shoes, well, today your mom and I had this horrible blow-up fight, and she called me nasty things, and I called her nasty things. What would you do? Like, maybe you don't need to let them in on that. Like, that's maybe a little more personal than they need to be aware of. But some of those easier problems, some of those things that those little day-to-day challenges, let them in a little bit on those things. Okay, how about this? Get a coloring book. Have you ever had the moment where you have to say something to your child? They've done something, maybe they've been sassy, they've been disrespectful, they've just been outright, rotten to their sibling or even to you, right? And they're expecting you to just blast, right? And can you imagine if they're like sitting there, they're bracing for the explosion, and you walk over to the kitchen table and you pull out a coloring book and some crayons, and you just start coloring, right? Your kid who is just expecting you to explode is like, Mom's gone crazy. What is she doing? Dad has lost his marbles. I've never seen Dad color before, and now he's sitting at the table coloring. All right, okay, so it's going to reset the moment for sure. But, another thing that's probably true is it's probably impossible for you to explode with anger while you're coloring, right? Like, maybe you're coloring a little viciously because maybe you're trying to hold it and you're like, argh. But like, your brain is actually getting a totally new focus, right? And it's helping you to calm and relax. But here's another cool thing, right? You do that enough times, you know what your kid is going to do? Can I have some colors too? Right? Or you invite them, hey, I'm going to color for a little bit. Why don't you come and sit and color with me? When you're a teenager, when you need to have a conversation with your teenager about something that's difficult, and you say, hey, we're going to sit down at the table together, let's color for a minute. Like, really, Mom? You want to color? You might get the whatever. And then the next thing you know, they're there coloring with you because it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun. 2 minutes, tell me anything. I think a lot of times when our kids explode with something inappropriate, they're holding a lot of stuff in too. I mean, you've had moments where you've exploded because you had all these stresses in work, in life, and whatever, and then something triggers you and you just blow up. And it's not really about the thing, right? It's not about the moment, it's about all this other stuff. And wouldn't it be great if you had somebody who was like, before all that happened, who was like, just, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to sit here with my mouth shut, and you just talk to me, and you tell me all the stresses that are going on. And you could just like, blah! And then after it was done, they're like, cool, I love you. Let's move on, right? You'd be like, that would be wonderful, right? And right now, you have to pay somebody like $120 an hour to do that for you, right? And you can, but that's the only way you can get that, unless you got a really good friend. But you could be that really good friend to your kids. So 2 minutes only because, maybe our kids just, they don't need more than that. Or maybe they do, but we just can't give them that. Or just give it a try, right? Say, just tell me 2 minutes. Just tell me whatever you want to say. And for that whole 2 minutes, maybe it's 2 minutes because you can't keep your mouth shut for more than 2 minutes. That's maybe your problem. But if you would just give them that time and say, reassure them, whatever you say in this 2 minutes, there's not going to be consequences for that, okay? I'm not going to discipline you for what you say now. I'm not going to get angry at you, because what you're really trying to do is give your child the space to just get out the things they need to get out. And honestly, I've done this with my kids for a long time now, a couple of times a week. And the fear that I had when I first started doing it was that they were going to say all kinds of things that I wouldn't be able to emotionally handle. And what I discovered instead was that I found out all the things that they've never told me that they're struggling with that have nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my wife, nothing to do with our home life, but everything to do with just the emotional challenges they face on a day-to-day basis. But it helps them to relax, and it helps us to build relationship because we've built trust. They know that it's okay to tell me things that they need to get off their chest because I've let them know that it's okay. All right, how about this one? A board game instead of going to McDonald's or Culver's or whatever else. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a really quick story. When I was, I think, 17, I was riding in a car with this, it was a mom from our church. She was driving me somewhere. I don't even remember where I was going, but she had volunteered to help my mom out by giving me a ride somewhere. I don't know why I didn't have my car, but we're driving, and she had this little boy, maybe 2 or 3 years old. I mean, he was old enough to talk. At least he was old enough to say the phrase, "I want to go to McDonald's." Because we drove by a McDonald's, and suddenly he started saying, "I want to go to McDonald's," with increasing volume and urgency for about the next 3 miles, over and over and over again. And of course, at first, the mom just said, "Oh, no, sweetie, we can't go to McDonald's today." And then after another mile, it was, "No, sweetie, we can't go to McDonald's today." And I'm watching, and I'm seeing this mom, and her knuckles are turning whiter and whiter and whiter, and she's just like, I'm like, she's just barely holding it together, and I'm just sitting there thinking, of what's going to happen here? And we got to where we were going, and I got out of the car, and she very sweetly, I said, "Thank you." She goes, "Oh yeah, no problem at all." And I slammed it, closed the door, and no sooner had I closed the door than I hear, "No, we are not going to McDonald's. Now shut your mouth." And I was like, oh my goodness. and this kid just starts wailing. Okay. Now, I don't want to blame McDonald's necessarily for this, although maybe we should. Makes it easier, right? But here's the point, right? I mean, our kids are going to ask for stuff like this, and sometimes we just give in, right? Stuff like that. And it's not wrong to go to McDonald's or Culver's or whatever. But the more often we make that part of the sort of the pattern of our lives to be like, oh, we're going to go stop and get something to eat. We're going to go over there. We're sort of feeding into our child's desire to get those things, especially if you've given in. Your child says, "I want to do this, I want to do this," and they whine, and you go, "Fine, we'll do this." Now they feel like they're entitled to it. So the suggestion here is, okay, how much does it cost to go to McDonald's today, right? If you get a Happy Meal, what does that cost? $5, okay? And if you could get something for yourself, you might get a number one, and that's another $7, right? So now we're up to 12. If you've got more than one kid, now you're starting to talk about, maybe $20, $30. If you've got a whole family, you might be talking 40 or 50. Did you know if you go over to Gnome Games or something like that, you can get some really awesome games for your kids for like $25. So imagine, as you said, you just made a plan. Okay, this is all about making a plan. Instead of going out to eat today, we're going to go to McDonald's, or not McDonald's, we're going to go to Gnome Games. We're going to get a game. We're going to bring it home. We'll make a $5 Aldi pizza. We're going to sit down at the table and we're going to play this game. A whole bunch of things happen when you do this with your kid. First of all is you're going to build relationship, which is excellent, right? Because you're spending time together. And most of our kids, especially when they're little, their primary love language, you've heard about love languages, right? We all have different love languages, but actually when we're small, we kind of have pretty much every little kid has a couple of primary ones, which mostly are time and touch. So our kids need to be cuddled, and they need us to spend time with them. And so you are spending time with your kids. You're giving them something that they need to reaffirm that relationship and that love. But then there's also all kinds of cool thinking things happening inside their brains when they play a board game. And so they're coming up with all kinds of new ways of looking at the world. And that's going to help them to be more receptive than when you say, hey, here's what we got to do now. Here's what we've got to do life-wise. We got to get ready for bed. Okay, game is done. Time to get ready for bed. They've been spending the last hour thinking, and so they're not going to the instinct of, now I'm going to argue. Instead, their brain says, okay, yeah, what do I have to think about to get ready for bed? Now you can even, and maybe you're thinking too, you can even turn the bedtime into a game. Hey, that was really great how you did this thing in the game. Now let's see if you can do the final quest. Get your teeth brushed, right? But they're in that frame of mind, and it makes it easier to do. Last idea here is library day. We used to do this when our kids were small. We still do it once in a while, although we kind of are running all over the place nowadays. But we go to the library, and everybody just grabs a bag full of books, and we spend the whole day just sitting and reading all the books that we brought home. Right? Why this is just a great tip, first of all, your kids get to see you read. And I know if you're somebody who's like, wait a second, I don't like to sit and read. Okay, well, that's your problem. Get over it. Go and just show your kids how awesome it is to read, because there is no better predictor for success for a child academically and career-wise than that they read a lot of books when they were kids and had people read books to them when they were kids. That's the number one predictor of success is time spent in books when you're a child. So, but the other thing that's really great about that is there's all kinds of lessons that can be learned through reading. There's all kinds of positive stuff happening. Plus, you get to just sort of, once again, meet that need for time and touch with your small kids because they can snuggle up next to you on the couch. A lot better than spending time with screens, right? How do I keep my kids off the screens? How do I keep them from just wanting to play video games all day? They got a whole stack of books they got to tear through first. That'll take them all day. There you go. There's an idea. How do I keep them from just wanting to watch TV? Get a big stack of books, and then you model it with them, right? Okay, those are our quick tips to try today. I want to go back to what Scripture has to say about our situation as parents. Scripture says that through faith in Jesus, we are all children of God. Paul writes it this way, because you are his sons and daughters, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. Because of God's Spirit in your heart, you have the opportunity to approach God as your Father. As a loving Father who cares for you and wants to hear your needs and knows what you need before you even knew it and wants to meet all your needs out of his abundance, out of his goodness, out of his love for you. And he also eagerly desires that you become the person he made you to be. It's his goal to shape you through your experiences into the person that he wants you to be so that you can do the things he wants you to do for his kingdom now and for his kingdom eternally. Yeah, he actually has a plan that after death, when we then rise to life again with him and we're with him in eternity, it's not like it's not like some of those old Far Side comics where you're just laying on a cloud playing a harp and eating grapes. Like that's a false image of heaven. The image of the eternal kingdom is one that's a perfect life on a perfect earth where there's no sin, where you get to do cool stuff. God is preparing you now for that. And you know who else he's preparing now for that? Your kids. Because they're his kids too, right? But he parents you in love, and one of the ways he parents you is that he disciplines you. Because he loves you, he chastens everyone he accepts as his son or daughter, as his child. The Lord disciplines us. Now, I want you to think a little bit about, though, how does God discipline you? And I want to see if we can relate this a little bit to our children. Does God give us limits, rules, boundaries, things that he says this you can and cannot do? Yeah, he does. When we don't follow those limits, boundaries, and rules, how does God react? What is his way of dealing with us? Now, that list of rules also concludes with a message about what happens to those who violate it, which is that they should die, and not just die physically, but die forever. That failure to live up to his righteous standard brings condemnation. What's God's response to us falling into that problem? God forgives, right? But not just forgives, actually. God meets the consequence that we couldn't bear. He says, there's a problem that's too big for you to bear. So I, in my love, step in and stop the ultimate consequence of your sin from being visited on you, because I love you. But what doesn't he take away? He doesn't take away the earthly kind of temporary consequences of our sin, right? Okay, I'll give you an example. If you lie to your boss at work about whether or not you got something done, you didn't do it, and then you tell him you did, what's going to happen to you? Probably going to lose your job, right? God doesn't stop you from doing that. Or like he doesn't stop the consequence from happening. It's not like, I lied to my boss, I did everything wrong, and God, can you just like get me out of this mess? And like, oh, it just went away, it just disappeared. Miracle, nobody noticed. No, God sometimes lets you go through that, right? But he lets you go through it so that you won't just keep on lying and eventually think that, well, you know what, I don't know if it really matters to God whether or not I lie, and eventually lose your relationship with him, the relationship he wants to have with you for eternity, right? So he allows you to have the consequence of your sin for a time so that you will learn not to just keep doing it and ultimately lose all relationship with him. So if we were to apply that to our own family life, to our own kids, we might say, you know, there are times where my child is going to do stuff that is just, it violates my rules as a house, or it's just plain bad. It's dumb. It's not good. It's sinful. And if I'm going to parent the way that God parents, maybe I need to start by letting them experience some consequence for that, right? Don't try and save your child from the consequence of their actions. They do something wrong. Don't step in and be like, oh, I'm going to try and fix that for them. Let them live through the difficulty. But there are times where maybe that consequence is going to be far too large for them to handle on their own. And so then you might have to say, okay, how am I going to help them through that? I remember this was many years ago in a different place, but had a family come to me. They had a teenager who had stolen a credit card and used it to call a hotline that was not appropriate. And now they were getting a lawsuit and criminal charges and all of these things. What do we do for our kid in this situation? I said, well, I think you're going to have to let him walk through the fire a little bit, But at some point, you have to decide, when does that get to be where they're not going to, they're not going to be able to handle. Okay, so what we ended up deciding on was the parents would help hire the lawyer to work through this. The kid was going to have to own up to a lot of stuff and maybe have to start paying some of those fees himself. They ended up resolving it where they were able to settle out of court and everybody kind of dealt with it. But they made the child pay the settlement fee. And it took him a long time to work that off. But it was good for him because he learned a valuable lesson, right? Temporary consequences, but the parents helped with maybe, fighting the battle a little bit so that he wouldn't end up with his entire life ruined for that mistake. Those are just a couple of examples, and maybe you can think of some examples in your own parenting where you can say, I want to discipline my child. I want to let them walk through consequences without losing the love and the support that they need to get through it. My child is tearing down the sidewalk on his bike, and I think to myself, I should just stop. No, don't go so fast. Don't go so fast. You're gonna hurt and scrape your knee. And so but you know what, man? If I let him tear down the sidewalk, and he does, either he's gonna learn how to go really fast and not get hurt, or he's gonna scrape his knee up and he's gonna learn this predictive schema that says when I go too fast, I sometimes get hurt. And so when he has a car someday, maybe he's gonna just go a little slower because he's learned caution as a child because he got hurt when he was a small child, right? I'll let you think of some other examples for yourself there. Why don't you just, I'm going to ask you to take some time, just turn to somebody who's nearby you for a minute, and just share one particular instance in the last week or so where your child was doing something where you could have let them just walk through a consequence. You could have let them walk through the results of their actions. And maybe share what you did or didn't do in that situation that you would have liked to. Give you half a minute here. Okay, now when we allow our children to go through the consequences of their actions, and sometimes that's going to be something that they bring on themselves through somebody else or through something else. We don't even have to come up with an idea, but other times maybe we have to enact a consequence ourselves. We have to say, okay, this is what's going to happen. We'll talk a little bit about how to do that soon here. But first, there's an important thing we've got to understand. A mistake that we sometimes make, we want to avoid making when we let our children experience consequences. So let's take a look.
Well, maybe we can look at an example from marriage and see if we can learn anything from that. And I'd like you to imagine this scenario that, my wife has just gotten home and she's brought something with her, a traffic ticket. And she's not really happy about it. She's pretty upset. She comes in the door and she says, I got a traffic ticket and I wasn't even going that fast. Now let's see how I handle this. And you can kind of grade me as we go. Okay, would you do that? Sure. Yeah, just kind of grade me and see how I do so far. And because this stuff is important, let me tell you. Okay, I got a traffic ticket. It wasn't even my fault. And he didn't even catch those other people that are going faster than me. Oh, man, that's got to feel awful. I'm sorry that happened. How am I doing so far? Good. Doing pretty good? Yeah, and like I said, I wasn't even going that fast. And then he didn't even care that I was in a hurry. And I told him that, oh, man, that's got to be awful. Give me a hug. I love you. How am I doing so far? Good. I'm learning. I'm doing better. Okay. Honey, did you match it up? What are you talking about? Well, did you match it up like we talked about before? What are you talking about? Well, remember when we were in the car the other day and I noticed that you were going a little too fast? I said, all you got to do is you look over there at the speed limit sign and you look at the speedometer and you just match it up. You know, what? See, that's your issue. See, every time I try to help you or try to give you some help with something like this, you get an attitude. See, it's really simple. All you have to do is you look at the speed limit sign, you look at the speedometer, you match the two up. If you're going too fast, you just let off on that pedal on the right and you just, what do? You just match it up. Or if you're going too slow, you push down on that pedal and you just match it up. It's simple. All you have to do is just match it up. Now, how many of you think that I had just, through this conversation, improved the level of marital intimacy in our home? How many of you think my wife is going to wrap her arms around me and say, oh, honey, I never thought about it that way, and I'd be so lost without you. Oh, thank you. And how many of you think that the next time we're in the car, she's going to drive and keep those two numbers matched up? Do you know anybody who would actually get more tickets and drive faster just to prove a point? Yeah. Now, here's what I don't get, because I'm a guy. I don't get it. Because I just gave her good advice, didn't I? I mean, think about the advice. Is it true and factual? Absolutely. All you have to do is match it up. So why is she so defensive? Why is she so upset? Because she already knows that. And how often do we do that to kids? Where we lecture them or moralize after we give the consequence. And what's the message that it sends? You're not bright enough to learn from this consequence. Now, do kids tend to live up to or down to the expectations we send? What are your thoughts? Yeah, either up to or down to. When I can apply empathy and allow the kid to learn and resist the urge, and it's so hard to resist the urge to lecture them and say, I told you so, or what have you learned from this? What kind of expectation am I sending? You can figure this out. You're a bright kid. When I slip up and I just can't help it, and I lecture and moralize afterwards, what happens? I send, a different kind of expectation, don't I? An expectation that says, I just don't think you can figure this out. Which one do you want for your kids? Yeah.
So what's the mistake we sometimes make? You can say it. We lecture, okay? Right? We lecture after the fact. We tell our kids, we spend a lot of words on telling our kids what they should be learning. What happens when we do that? Let me ask this. Raise your hand if you've ever found that the more you talk at your children when they've been naughty, the more you talk at them, the better they start to get. Right? Like it just makes the whole quality of the house go up with every word you add to it. No? But how many of us find ourselves trying to see if it'll work? Keep trying, keep saying more words. Maybe that'll help maybe this time my lecture will make a difference. What happens in their brains They shut us off. Yeah. I think that my words, all the words that I'm adding are going to somehow make something sink in, but they turned off the volume a long time ago, right? And they're not hearing anything I'm saying. All they're hearing is, it's kind of like the Charlie Brown thing. Remember the old Charlie Brown show? The teacher, wah, 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 right? Like they're just hearing noise, and their thinking has stopped. But what else happens? It turns into an argument because you have now become the opponent in the situation. You're the enemy. Rather than the consequence teaching them, you're the one they're fighting with and wrestling with. They're not wrestling with their consequences, they're wrestling with you. And so they're not learning from their actions. And for some kids, it kind of just goes like this. Why should I think about this? Mom has already done it for me. Dad already knows how to analyze the situation. I don't have to think about it. They don't maybe say that to themselves consciously, but subconsciously they're realizing, I don't need to know what my actions mean for me. Mom and Dad have already got it figured out, and they'll tell me. Why even think about it? And if you rely on this as your way of helping your child understand their actions and what their actions mean, then they get used to all their years of life not having to think about their own actions, right? And then they turn 18 and they move out of the house, and you're not there to lecture them anymore. And when your voice isn't there to tell them what to do and what not to do, what happens? They just do their own thing now, right? So you want them to learn how to take their own actions to heart by letting them figure it out. So I'm going to ask you to do this for a second. Give yourself a grade based on how often you find yourself lecturing, and turn and share that grade with somebody. If you're here with a spouse, don't grade them, okay? Grade yourself. And if you're not here with a spouse, don't grade your spouse in absence. Okay, so we've got a handful of things that we've looked at, but now we're going to get into kind of the meat of what does it mean to actually parent the love and logic way. That is, what is kind of the overall philosophy. And what we'll do is we'll watch this video, and we're going to take a break. And then after the break, we'll come back and we'll kind of just look at some specific examples of how we can apply each of those things. And AJ, this is that video that we need just maybe a little more volume on, so thanks for helping out with that. AJ's helping me with the volume so you guys can hear this next one.
Hi, this is Monica Fay, the Love and Logic Institute, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Charles Fay.
Hi there.
So you're going to tell us a little bit about what is this Love and Logic stuff?
Yeah, what is it? When people ask, what is Love and Logic? And Love and Logic is practical, it's scientifically solid, it's compassionate, it's common sense, really, what it is. And it revolves around 5 core principles that are absolute non-negotiables. See, Love and Logic is not a script. It's not like we follow steps when we're working with the kids so much, but we ask ourselves, how can I fit in with these 5 core beliefs or principles as I'm working with the kid? The first one has to do with mutual dignity. And what that looks like is I talk to the kid in the same way that I'd want to be talked to. Hey, it's the good old golden rule.
Just a little bit of respect one way goes a long way.
Yeah, and I know some teachers that have a sign up in their room that says, I will treat you with great respect so that you will know how to treat me. And I love that. I love that sign. So the dignity, the respect, key part. Another part has to do with shared thinking. Whenever there's a problem, that a kid experiences, or a challenge, or something they're kind of afraid of doing, like talking to their teacher or their coach about something, it's simple for us to jump in and do it for them.
Right.
But not effective. So the effective thing is to coach them on how to do it and send them off to do that specific thing. Talk to the teacher, talk to the coach. Maybe the kid's struggling with a math problem. Instead of us sitting down and basically doing it all for them, we might give them little bits of the answer and let them struggle, because struggle is such a big part of building self-esteem.
Yep. Character building.
Yeah, it is.
So
it
we're
is.
standing beside, not between our kids and the problem, and not behind them, but always beside them. We're there to help.
Yeah, we're right there to help, but sometimes we don't.
Right.
Because with great wisdom, we try to step back and allow them to learn from the experience. So another core principle, love and logic, is shared control, and we know that control is a big deal.
I like control.
Yeah, we all like control.
A lot.
And if we don't get the control that we want, or those control needs met, it squirts out in other areas. Sometimes we get passive aggressive. Somebody says, "Hurry up," we slow down, or somebody says, "Why you need to clean this stuff up," and it gets a little sloppier all the time. And so the science behind control is this: I give away as much of it that I can that I don't want, that I don't need, and definitely the control that I don't have, right? And then I have this pool of control left over that is stuff that I absolutely need, and I'm going to hold on to that. But when you give it away, you're more likely to get back or keep what you really need. So another way of looking at it is give it away on your terms so that the kid doesn't take it on their terms.
Sure.
Now, another core principle is empathy. And that means locking in that sadness, that concern, genuine. I have to say genuine. Genuine empathy for the kid or the adult when something goes wrong, and particularly when there's going to be a consequence coming up.
And we do hear that is the toughest skill to do.
Yeah,
Empathy.
yeah.
It's not natural.
Right.
It's not easy, but it is oh so effective.
Oh, so effective, and oh, so relationship sustaining. We want people to have long-term relationships with their kids. And so it sounds like, "Oh, I love you so much," and when you were out with the church group, you toilet papered the youth leader's house, and what are you going to do to solve that problem, right? There's a little love and logic right in there, and we hold that kid accountable. But see, the empathy makes the poor decision that the kid made the bad guy, and it keeps us in more of the good guy position, right? Okay, and so we have how many principles here? We have dignity, we have shared thinking, we have shared control, we have empathy, and it all flows into this one overarching principle. And the overarching principle is relationship. It's, I love you, kid. You are the apple of my eye. And we know that when kids fall in love with their parents, truly fall in love, and there's a respect element there, fall in love and respect with their parents, they're less likely to go out and do really dangerous things. They're less likely to rebel. They're still going to make bad decisions. But the huge piece of this is if I have that kind of relationship with my kid and they do something dumb, they're more likely to come and talk to me about it, admit it to me, so that I can be part of helping them solve it. And that becomes pretty important as they become teenagers. Very important. And I don't know what it is, but life is better when you like kids, particularly when you're a parent or teacher. Yeah, and the relationship component of love and logic brings us the joy.
Okay, so let's take a 10.5-minute break. Go ahead, stretch, use the restroom, grab some coffee, water, or whatever. Chat with each other, chat with me, whatever. Let's just give ourselves some time here to refresh our brains. Okay, so I want to just kind kind of go over those things. The video that we just watched before the break, he kind of laid out 5 principles for parenting the Love and Logic way. And I want to review those and try to give some concrete examples or thoughts or ideas related to those. So the first one had to do with dignity. He used the word dignity in the video. Sometimes you might call it building your child's self-concept, who they are as a person. And to give a good concrete to this would be to notice their good behavior when they're engaged in it, rather than giving praise. I'll say that again. Notice their good behavior rather than giving praise. And if you think about what the difference is, imagine your child colors a picture and hands it to you, and when they're 3, 4, 5, they might not color entirely inside the lines unless you were like really on them when they were really small to make them do it, and then you've probably given them a complex. But they probably chose colors that you would think, I don't know if that's the right colors to choose. Maybe it's kind of a mess. And you could do one of 2 things. You could either take and go, oh, that's so beautiful. You must be a great artist. And you know in your head that that your child's not actually like this fantastic artist, unless they are, in which case they probably already have a complex. Most artists do. But you could do this instead, though. You could say, wow, I really like that you chose this color here. That was an interesting choice. Or, hey, why, you made this, you made the Little Mermaid, she's got purple hair. Like, so why did you choose purple instead of red? Like, right, that's her normal color. Oh, I chose purple because of this. Okay, oh, that's an interesting choice. Another great example would be, if you're interacting with, maybe it's a little girl who's, she's gotten dressed for the day, and you could say, oh, you're so pretty, you're always so beautiful. Okay, well, you know what happens to a little girl if you always tell her you're so pretty? When she becomes a teenager, you know what she does? She says, but I don't think I'm so pretty. And everybody told me I was, but I look at myself and I don't feel it. And then I start to wonder if anybody was ever just telling me the truth. But what if you instead said, I love the choice you made with how you did your hair today. I like that you put the bow up that way. I really like that color on you. That's a good choice that you made there. So you're building their self-concept because they get to reinforce that choices I make can be good, and I can be appreciated for the decisions that I'm capable of making. I can't change what I look like, but I can change the choices I make with how I look. Does that make sense? Or I can't change whether or not I'm talented at one or another activity, but I can make choices with what I do in that activity. And noticing the behavior. So this comes when it comes to discipline, when it comes to figuring out, okay, is my child behaving or not behaving? If I catch them doing good things, now I'm talking about not whether or not they're a good child or a naughty child. I'm talking about, are you making good choices or not? And now they've learned that my choices matter. So noticing things, noticing behavior rather than giving praise. Another thing he talked about was sharing control. In other words, I like the way he put it. If you caught it, he said, give away as much control as I can. Right? So, for example, I give my child lots of little choices over the course of the day. Maybe when it's time for them, they're getting out of bed and it's time to get ready for the day. Hey, would you like to put on your pajamas first? I mean, you put on your pajamas, put on your clothes, get out of your pajamas and put on your clothes first, or would you like to brush your teeth first? Or would you like to do it the other way around? Hey, when it comes to breakfast here, would you like to have, let them choose their breakfast out of choices you're willing to offer them? So, and that's important, right? Because if you say, what would you like for breakfast, what are they going to choose? Lucky Charms, Fruit Loops, sugar cereal, whatever, right? Would you like eggs or would you like oatmeal? I want Lucky Charms. No, I said, would you like eggs or would you like oatmeal? Which one? Oatmeal. Okay, great. Hey, good choice. That's going to keep you feeling full for a long time, right? So sharing the control, giving them choices within limits, choices you can live with. You're getting ready to leave the house, and it's a little chilly outside, and you say, you know what, they need a coat. Would you like to put on your coat now, or do you want to put it on when you get outside the door? I don't want a coat at all. Oh, no, you got to bring a coat today, but would you like to put it on now, or would you like to put it when you get outside the door? Right? So you're giving them the choice to decide between those two. Now, some of your kids are going to be so stubborn, they're going to say, neither, I don't want to do it. They go, oh, that's so sad. Now you have to claim control, right? But you tried to share the control to start with. Now, I guess you'll have to put it on now, right? But those are things to work through. But the more you give those little choices, the more you give them the opportunity to think about what they're doing, the more control you're sharing. And then you're not in a power struggle, right? Because you don't want to be in a power struggle with a small child because you'll always lose. Offer empathy, then logical consequences. Okay, so they've done something that they shouldn't have done. And here's just a thing to kind of implant in your brain is find a phrase that you can say with real, genuine empathy and practice it regularly. So for instance, you might say, oh, that's a bummer. Oh, man, that's a bummer. And maybe even like, if you just practice it in a mirror. Oh, that's so hard. Oh, that's got to be tough, right? Practice that so then in the moment when your child does something that you know is wrong, instead of going, how could you do that? Instead you say, oh, that's really too bad. Boy, that's going to be hard to deal with, how you made that choice. I feel for you, because now you're going to have to fix it. Oh, you broke your brother's toy? Oh man, that's a real bummer. I don't know. Do you have money to buy him a new one, or you don't? Oh man, that's really disappointing, man. What do you think? What should we do about that? Hey, maybe we could hold a garage sale, and you could choose some toys that we could sell to get enough money to replace your brother's toy. Would that be an idea? Oh, yeah, I know. That would be really sad to have to get rid of your toys. Oh, man. Well, maybe there's somebody who will let you walk their dog. Yeah, I know. You'll lose some video game time. Yeah, that's a bummer. That's really sad. I feel bad for you. I wouldn't want to give up my video game time either. But I mean, we got to do this, right? Okay, so you see what I'm doing? It's like trying to say, I care more about your feelings about this than I care about really whether or not you know that I'm upset, right? But at the same time, I'm letting them walk through this with my love undergirding it. This is how God walks with us through things, right? Oh, it's really sad that you chose to say angry words to your spouse instead of choosing nice words. Yeah, I know. You're going to have to probably buy some flowers. Might have to go on an extra date. Yeah, I know. It's going to cost extra money. But, gosh, I mean, it's probably going to be good in the long run. Yeah. Maybe in the future you'll say some nicer words. I hope so. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm sorry that you're going to have to walk through this. That's tough. But I still love you. I still forgave you. Went to the cross for you. But I'm not going to save you from this. Right? So, empathy, logical consequences, when combined, teach a lot more, but they also preserve a relationship that you want to have, so that they'll listen to you when the time comes that they say, I need advice, I need direction, I need help. You're the one that they turn to. Share the thinking and the problem solving. You talked about that. This one can be really hard, right? Because when our child is going through a difficult thing, our tendency is to look and say, well, I know what the answer to this situation is, so why don't I just tell them? Can they really come up with their own? But here's a really great solution to that problem in my own head of I've got to give them the solution. Pray for them to mess up. first. Or pray for them to struggle. Pray for them to go to school and have a problem to deal with. Because if I'm praying for that, if I'm saying, Lord, let them have a difficult situation, then I'm much less likely to say, now I've got to solve it. Because why am I praying for it? Because I want them to experience difficulties so that they can learn from them, because I know that I've learned from challenges in my life. I didn't learn by somebody standing there and telling me, do this. Here's how to do all of life. I learned by doing life. I want my child to learn by doing life. So if I'm praying for it, then I'm not going to just step in and fix it, right? But what maybe I do want to do is be a good counselor to my child when they're in the struggle. And so there are some phrases I might adopt like, well, that sounds like a really hard situation. Would you like me to give you some advice? That's a really key question. Would you like me to give you some advice? Because how many of you, if you asked your kids, would you like me to give you some advice, would say, no? Probably a few of you, right? No, I don't want your advice. Okay, well, I'm glad I asked then, because if I started giving it without asking you, you would have been upset, right? That's what happens with some of our kids. We start giving them advice and they get tense and we go, why are you so upset? I'm just trying to help you. Well, because they don't want your advice. If you asked, they'd say no. But maybe they say yes, and you could say, okay, well, did you come up with any solutions? Maybe before I give you my advice, maybe I should see, what solutions have you come up with? I don't know. Oh, okay. Well, how about this? Some kids, I love using that phrase, some kids have done this, and give a suggestion. And you say, some kids have tried this. What do you think about that? Okay, so for instance, maybe your child forgot to turn in a homework assignment. Now they're in trouble with the teacher because they didn't get it turned in, and they've got an F grade in Schoology, and they're like, oh, what do I do about this F grade? And you say, well, what would you like my advice? Yeah, okay. Well, some kids will talk to the teacher and ask if they can do a makeup assignment. What do you think about that? And now your child has a chance to analyze that suggestion and decide, well, okay, I'll give that a go. Sure, yeah, I'll give that a try. Or maybe they say, no, that's extra homework. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, some kids might decide that, the next 5 assignments, they're going to just work extra hard to make sure that they get those done so they get the A, and then it balances out that F, and then what do you think about that? Well, I always get C's on most things, Dad. Yeah, that's true. You'd have to work extra hard. It's an idea. Some kids will just go back and they'll just do the assignment and turn it in anyway and just see if the teacher will give them credit for it. What do you think about that? Yeah, I guess I could try that. Well, some kids will ask for extra credit, see if they can do an extra assignment down the road. So you're just giving suggestions, right? You're not telling them what to do. You're just giving them ideas. And they might come up with their own, and what happens though if they come up with one that isn't an idea that you came up with? What do you do? You're like, I hope you're going to tell us. You let them do it, right? You let them. Because ultimately, their ability to learn through their own choices matters more than you making your child do it right. They will learn more through that. They might fail. It's okay. I want to give you that permission to say it's okay if my child does not always succeed at everything they do, because you haven't succeeded in everything you've ever done, right? You still got food on the table, a roof over your head. Life will continue. Okay, all of this, he said, goes towards building the adult-child relationship. This is kind of that overarching principle. But remember, I said that earlier when we were talking about those 5 tips. Really, everything you do that builds relationship with your kids is going to help with the other 4 things here. But it's also going to, down the road, pay in dividends with your ability to guide them in life. Because wouldn't it be great if when your children are in their 20s, they're calling you and saying, hey, I need just a little bit of advice. Or, hey, not even advice, I just want to talk. Hey, let me tell you about all the cool things that are going on in my life right now, Mom. Man, I just had a really great day today, and you're the person I wanted to call first. Isn't that what we want? Right. So let's work on building the relationship so that we have the opportunity for those joys down the road. Okay, so that's kind of like a lot of like overarching philosophy, and maybe I just want to take a pause for a second and say, are there questions that are kind of burning after that? Are there things that you're like, wait a second, I'm not sure I'm understanding this particular point? Yeah, Aaron, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, of course she does. Sure, okay, so she wants it her way. Can you give me an example of a situation that you're thinking about? Okay, so her outfit, she wants to wear her outfit her way, right? Okay, so let's go back to sharing the control. We're talking about giving lots of choices. So maybe the first question I have to ask myself as a parent when I'm wondering how my child is going to get dressed is, what am I worried about? Am I worried that my child's dress choices are going to be inappropriate? If that's the case, then I have to give choices within limits, right? Say, okay, well, it's not appropriate to go out of the house without pants on, right? So would you like to wear the blue pants or the red pants or the glitter pants, something like that. But if I'm worried that my child's going to wear pants and a shirt that don't match, by the way, as a parent of boys, I mean, my kids never match anyway, and they're, teenagers. So the only time my son matches is when he wears his work outfit because they make him match. But if I'm worried about that, maybe the problem is that I'm afraid that if I go out in public with my child wearing mismatched clothing, I'm afraid that other parents will think that I don't know how to match my own clothing, right? I'm afraid of the judgment that's going to come on me for that. And I have to stop and ask myself two very important questions. Number one, are any parents really going to be paying that close attention to what my child is wearing to judge me on the basis of it? And number two, do I care? Right? Like, do I really care if the cashier at Walmart judges me because my child isn't dressed in a matching outfit? Honestly, that person's like, they're nothing. I mean, not that they're nothing to me. I love them as a person in the world, right? But I don't care what the Walmart cashier thinks about me when it comes to my child's dress sense, or my own for that matter, right? And I mean, let's be honest, you walk into Walmart, I don't know if anybody cares about dress sense in Walmart most of the time. I think there's a whole website devoted to that idea. But so I don't know if that kind of helps maybe just take the pressure off. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so there's a skill that's part of the Love and Logic thing, and we're not going to get into that today as much, but I'll give you kind of just a snapshot of it today. Okay, so you give two choices, and she starts to throw a temper tantrum. And the skill that we use then, especially with our little ones, is make sure they're safe, make sure they're in an environment where there's nothing that's going to be dangerous for them, and we put them in basically a timeout. What I had to do with my boys when they would do that, and one of them was especially bad about this for a while, was we'd put him in his room, and I would stand and I would literally just hold the door. And I would say, "That's so sad, looks like you need a little room time." And sing it, because when you're singing, you can't yell when you're singing. It's impossible to yell and sing at the same time, all right? So, "Oh, looks like you need a little room time, that's so sad." I'd take him into the room and I'd close the door, and yeah, I'd hold the door. Now, I don't lock the door because I don't advocate locking children in rooms, all right? but I'm in control there. I'm holding this door, right? And my child at 2.5 was not strong enough to overwhelm my hand on a door, right? And I held the door. And then, now here's the big trick though, is at some point, his energy runs out and the fit stops. That's when I set the timer. And Love and Logic often says, set the timer for the same number of years as the child is years old. So for a 2.5-year-old, I'd set a timer for 2 minutes. Say, now that you're sweet, I'm setting a timer, you'll have some recovery time, right? Some time to yourself to recover. 2 minutes goes by, and then you open the door. Oh, welcome back. Glad that you're here. Hey, so between these 2 pairs of pants, which ones did you decide you're going to choose? Now, the first few times, going to warn you, cue meltdown number 2. Oh, that's so sad. Looks like you need a little room time. And they go back. It takes investment of time. But over time, you keep doing the same thing, what happens is it's creating a predictive schema in their brains. If I don't take mom's choice, not only do I not get what I want, but I'm still going to struggle, right? I'm still going to deal with this situation. I just don't get what I want, and the fit didn't help me. And eventually, she'll start to learn it's just not worth it. But as soon as you feed into it, either lose your own temper and then it becomes a blow up, then she's just learned, it's totally worth it to throw a fit. Look at all the exciting things I can make mom do. She gets red in the face, her voice gets really loud, the whole house just kind of gets chaotic for a while. It's kind of fun, right? And then if you give in and you say, you know what, whatever, you wear whatever you want, hey, that works. I throw a fit and I get whatever I want. I'm going to try that with McDonald's, right? So instead we say, no, here are your choices. We throw a fit. Uh-oh, looks like you need a little room time. That's so sad. Put them in the room. Hold the door. We'll see you when you're sweet. You can throw that one in. I always like that one. We'll see you when you're sweet. Hold the door. Wait. Oh, you're calm. Good. I'm going to give you 2 minutes so you can recover. Get a little recovery time. 2 minutes are up. Wow, welcome back. Now, which choice did you make? Okay, that's my suggestion. Give that strategy a try. I think you're going to see some good results in time. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't advocate singing a song and putting them in a room when they're 8 because it's probably not going to work. But maybe let's get ahead of the question for a second and ask this one. If the clothes aren't appropriate, where did she get them? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Gotcha. Okay. So maybe we can start by saying, okay, you know what? Actually, we got to look at what the school dress code says about this kind of clothing. And maybe depending on where they go to school, obviously that's going to be different too, right? But it would, another way would be to say, here's mom's dress code. You get ahead of the problem. You're talking about it beforehand. Maybe, and this is a time too where sharing the control, sharing the thinking and problem solving goes ahead of this, where it's like, okay, so you're concerned about making sure you look good, but I'm concerned about making sure you look appropriate. And especially at 8 years old, there can be a conversation about, here's why that's really important to me. Here's what God has to say about this. Here's what God says about your body and why this matters. They're starting to think, a little bit abstractly there. So let's come up with a dress code together that is going to respect what I want and also maybe fits with some of the things you want to wear. Let's go shopping and find some appropriate clothes that you think look cool, so you look good with your friends, but that cover you the way that I think you want to be covered. And then make sure that the only clothes she has to choose from are ones that you're happy with. But then, when you're going shopping, then it's give lots and lots of choices, right? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna buy you 5 shirts and 3 pairs of pants. I don't know what you're, whatever. If you go to Kohl's, you get the 80% off sale because everything's always 80% off at Kohl's. Is that right? I think that every time I walk in. So now we're gonna go. Okay, you can choose out of these 15 shirts, 5 of them. We're gonna really invest the time. You have to plan, right? Takes a lot of working ahead, but it's really hard in the moment, right? She shows up Monday morning wearing something, you're like, you're not going to school wearing that, right? Maybe that's a place where the choice has to be, well, you can do digital learning today or you can go to school, but if you're going to school, you gotta be wearing something I'm okay with. Or I can call your school and say you're gonna be digital learning today. Would you like to see your friends? And just, you have to hold the line firm on it because it's important to you to communicate those values. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, here's the thing. It's about giving, you want to give the child as many choices, especially when they're little. Give them as many choices as you can because within the limits of what you can live with. Because if they only have choices to make that are within what you can live with, they'll grow up with that as being normal. Yeah, and I love that idea of what you said about just the only clothes you have available are ones I'm happy with. Therefore, you can choose whatever you want to wear today. Yeah, and that might be a solution, by the way, even going to your problem with the 2.5-year-old. If the only choices you have to make are ones I'm happy with, dress yourself, go for it, do whatever you feel like, right? Express yourself artistically through your clothing because I'm happy with all these choices. That could be a really good thing. I'm going to move on now, but we'll have some more time for question response later on. If you have some things that are still kind of swimming and you're not sure how to ask them yet, jot something down so we can talk about it. I want to go to another video here where we talk about where does good discipline start for us as parents. Take a look at this.
To me, discipline is not something you do to your child, it's something you do for your child. It's a gift to your child. See, and this isn't just about coercion or making your kids behave. It's not just about changing the outward behavior. It's not just about consequences. How many of you have found consequences don't even work for your kids? Right? How many of you have taken away everything your child owns? There's nothing left. So your 9-year-old has lost his driver's license already, and you have nothing left to give. So what it's about is a changed heart. It's a new person. It's a different kid. So even the word discipline, what's the root? Disciple. It means to teach. It means to model, to show, to disciple. So 3 questions I always ask when I'm disciplining a child. First question, am I teaching my child something? It's pretty basic. Next question, am I showing him a different way to do it next time? See, because just sending him to his room, I don't really teach him anything, just send him to his room. I want to show him how to do it differently next time. And then the third thing, am I building my relationship with my child? Because in the end, I want kids who are responsible and respectful, but I want a good relationship with them, right? Because many of us grew up in that very authoritarian home, and it was all this fear and intimidation. And our parents sometimes got the outward behavior they wanted, but inwardly, we didn't have relationships with them. And to me, discipline is a supreme act of love. It is. I love you enough that I put your well-being ahead of my own convenience in the moment. I love you enough that I'm willing for you to be angry at me, even when I say no or take something away, because I have your best interest at heart, not just my convenience. See, because in Proverbs 3:12 it says this, "For the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in." And I delight in my son. I love my son. So I want to discipline because it's about love.
So we want to train up our children into the people that God wants them to be. And I'm going to summarize some things that the guy in the video said by kind of just starting here. It starts with managing our anxieties. Because a lot of times our ability to lovingly discipline, to disciple our children, is hampered by our anxiety about their behavior. I'm afraid of what people will think when they see my child behaving this way. I'm afraid of what their future life will look like if this behavior doesn't change. So I think I gotta do something to fix this issue now so that when they're older, this won't continue to be an issue. I'm afraid that if they keep saying things like they just said, they won't ever love me or want to be with me anytime in the future. How does this get in the way of our ability to disciple with love? If it's about my anxiety, then who's it about? It's about me, right? And my parenting, my discipline becomes about me when I let my anxiety rule. And so then I'm no longer focused on their good and their future. I'm focused on my feelings and making myself feel better about the situation. So I want to shortcut that. I want to get ahead of that anxiety and instead disciple for their future good. And I've got some ideas for you for how we might go ahead and do that. Some ideas for managing your anxiety when it comes to discipline situations. So the first and foremost is just to keep yourself focused on the future. Where do I want my child to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What kind of a person do I want them to be? What do I want to see in their lives? I want to ask myself that question. I want to try and envision what this kid is going to look like and act like in 5, 10, 15 years. And say, okay, maybe stop, have a prayer and say, Lord, you have a vision for this child's life. Help me to see that vision. Now, in that vision, help me to be the person for them that gets them there. Make that my prayer for my child. Let me be the one that you use to get my child to be the person you want them to be, and help me to see it clearly. If I'm constantly focusing on that, then I'm kind of removing my anxiety from the picture, right? Because I'm not thinking about me. There's a great quote from C.S. Lewis about self-esteem where he said that the key is not to think less of myself, but to think about myself less. And the same is true when it comes to managing our anxiety with our parenting. I just got to take myself out of the picture and focus on them. All right, number 2, this is real practical. Chips and salsa. My child has done something that I don't like. I need to talk to them about it. We need to have a conversation. I know this conversation is going to get stressful. I know the possibility is that if I engage in this conversation, I might raise my voice and start yelling. Have you ever seen anybody yell when they're eating chips? Try it sometime. Try crunch on some chips and then you start yelling. See what happens. It's hilarious, but don't like look at anybody while you're doing it because they're going to get a chip shower. You can't yell and eat chips and salsa at the same time. It's just physically impossible. And so have a conversation with your kids over chips and salsa. Here's a great way to do it. Situation happens, you feel the tension rising, you know you got to talk with them, but things just aren't going well. And this is especially good for your older kids, right? Or for even, you're 7, you're 8, and on up, is, hey, you know what? We got to talk about this. I'll go grab the chips, you grab the salsa, I'll meet you out on the back porch in 5 minutes. And then you go and you meet and you sit and you have a conversation over a bowl of salsa and a bag of chips. By the way, chips are really cheap at Aldi, so just a pro tip there. But it's a great way to have the conversations you've got to have without losing your temper. And it helps you with your anxiety too. Another way, and this is good especially if you've got small kids, is to go brain dead. Come up with a phrase that you can say in situations where your child is melting down that you don't have to engage. Because as soon as you start arguing with like a 5-year-old, what happens? Not only do you not get anywhere, right? But you're an adult and you're arguing with a 5-year-old, right? Stop yourself and say that for a second. I'm an adult and I am having a debate with a 5-year-old. Where's the logic in this situation, right? So instead, go to some simple phrases like, I know. You just say that with me. I know. Right? That's really easy, right? Can you say that over and over and over again? I know. They're upset, they're yelling, Mom, you never let me do anything. I know. Well, my brother got to do it. I know. No, my life is ruined. I know. No, you don't know. I know. Right? You just keep saying it. Come up with I love the I love you too much to argue. I love you too much to argue. You can even sing it. I love you too much to argue. Right? Because you can't yell when you're singing. You just keep that phrase. Going brain dead helps you manage your anxiety. Okay, this isn't necessarily fixing anything other than it's teaching them that mom, you just can't argue with mom. She just says the same 2 words over and over again. There's just nothing I can say. You're impossible, Mom. I know. Right? You just keep going with it. So it's taught them arguing doesn't get you anywhere, but it's also teaching you my anxiety doesn't need to enter into this conversation. Okay? And then you can practice that once again. I said before, find a phrase you can practice in front of a mirror. Just, sit at home. While you're getting yourself dressed for the day, you just look at yourself in the mirror. Imagine that the person in the mirror is, your child yelling at you, and just say it. I know, or whatever phrase you come up with. I love you too much to argue. Some people use that one. Some people use, boy, that's tough. Stuff like that. You can come up with a lot of different ones, but as long as it's something you feel like you can say a lot. This one is really, really hard, and it makes a lot of anxiety well up in us, and we just have to be okay with it. Wait. Your child misbehaves. Don't come up with a consequence on the spot. Right? We do that, don't we? Oh, you did that. You're in your room for the next 3 days. But I thought we were going to Grandma's tomorrow. You're right. You're in the room for the 3 days after we come back from Grandma's. And by the time you get back from Grandma's, you've forgotten. And they're like, is he going to remember? Maybe he won't. Okay. Right? But if you delay the consequence, what do? You give yourself time to think and get creative and say, okay, how am I going to deal with this? But you also give them time to think. So a great phrase with this is, I'm going to have to do something about this. And you just leave it. And your child will imagine something and probably come up with something that's far more. I do this all the time with my kids, and honestly, it doesn't happen as often now, but Paladin, who's helping out in the childcare room, I would say, I'm going to have to do something about this. And he would come back to me an hour later and say, Dad, I know you were going to come up with something, but here's what I thought about. Okay? And he's like, I think this weekend, I shouldn't have any video game time at all. And I'm like, I was going to take away an hour. But like, if you want to take away your whole week, I don't tell him that. I'm thinking to myself, whoa, that's a consequence way bigger than the crime. But yeah, okay, buddy, you know what? If you think that's fair, I think that's fair. We'll just go with that. Sometimes just waiting and delaying the consequence lets them come up with their own consequence for themselves. That is, they're learning something through that, right? It's helping them weigh their own decisions. And that's a good thing. But it also allows me to step out of my anxiety for a minute, calm down, say some prayers for myself and for them, and then move forward with a little more confidence in the situation. Now, what is the reason we don't like to delay the consequence? You know what I hear from parents all the time is, well, I'm afraid that if I don't come up with a consequence right then, they're going to forget about what the consequence was for. Right? Anybody afraid of that sometimes? Yeah. Have you ever told your child, we're going to get ice cream after church? Or we're going to go to McDonald's later today? Have you ever known a small child to forget that kind of a thing? No. If your small child can remember that you said 3 days, no, what happens is you say, we'll go and do this, and then 3 days later they're like, Mom, you said we were going to get ice cream after church, but that was on Saturday, and we haven't gone to church since then, and we still haven't gotten ice cream. And you're like, I completely forgot. And they're like, well, I didn't. They remember things. Our children remember a lot of things. So it's okay to wait. They'll remember what it's for. That's not a problem. All right. Plan ahead and pray for a chance to discipline. It's really hard to be angry about, or I should say anxious about our child's misbehaviors and act out of that anxiety when we're asking it to happen, right? We're asking for a chance to lead our children through these things. Lord, help me to disciple them. Give me opportunities to show them the right way. Now when it happens, I'm not going, oh, now what do I do? Instead, I'm going, okay, Lord, we planned for this. Let's figure it out. Sometimes we have to plan ahead, long ahead. You know, what if, for instance, every time you take your child to the store, they act up because they ask for something, they see something they want. I want that candy bar, or whatever, I want the toy, or whatever, and they always throw a fit, right? You're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do about this? Every time we go into the store, this is what happens. And you're feeling frustrated, right? Because maybe you think to yourself, well, you know, I mean, my options are what? I go to the store and I just suffer through it. My child screams all through Target. Or instead I have to abandon the shopping trip, and then I don't get my shopping done. And now what do I do? Plan ahead. I bet you have a neighbor. We'll call her Mabel. She's probably that little bit older lady who lives down the street, doesn't have any kids in the home anymore. You always see her out in her garden. She's got like the meticulously planned front garden with like every season it changes colors. Like there's like new cushions on the little garden bench and all these things. And you're like, who has time for that, right? But you walk up and you knock on Mabel's door and you say, you know, Mabel, I know that you've got grandkids now, and so I know you raised kids. I bet you were an amazing mom. Oh, shucks, honey, no, I wasn't. Well, yeah, I bet you were a better mom than I am because I can't go into Target without my child melting down. I need help. Oh. Now, is that a little bit hard to ask for help? Yeah. Would you, if you knew that asking for help meant your child would be a stable and healthy adult, are you able to set aside your pride for a moment? Is that worth it? Maybe right now you're all nodding your heads. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But it's going to be harder when you knock on the door, I guarantee it. But give it a try, because you know what she might do is say, you know what, let's talk. Okay, so here's what you do, right? I go into Target, and now I'm praying, Lord, let her melt down in Target today, because here's what you've done. You've got Mabel on speed dial. And Mabel is just getting a little bit of errands run right next to Target there, just in case. And meltdown starts. Hey, Mabel, time to execute Plan B. All right. Your child's sitting there, why did you just call somebody, and what the heck is Plan B? And the next thing you know, Mabel comes in and sweeps up the child and walks away. And now you finished Target on your own. And your child's screaming, and the workers at Target are like, I think that lady just kidnapped. No, she didn't kidnap her. Gave her permission to make a store announcement. Excuse me, if you see a child screaming in the arms of a sweet old lady, guaranteed she is doing what she's supposed to do. That's Grandma. We'll just call her Grandma. She's going with Grandma. It's all good. And Mabel takes her out to her car, or out to maybe your car, and she sits with her in the car, and the child gets to throw a fit. Now, is Mabel having a rough time with this? Yeah, Mabel's probably not so happy about it, but she knows it's going to end, and so she's willing to do it. She's also willing to do it because you're paying her, because you love her and you want to thank her, so you give her a little bit of compensation for the whole event. But wait, are you paying her? No, wait a second, the child is paying her. Because here's how the conversation goes later on. Oh, that was really sad that you behaved that way in Target, and Mabel had to come, and she had to take you out to the car. Yeah, I mean, a babysitter like that is expensive. Do you have money? No? Okay, well, we'll have to figure out which of your toys Mabel will take in fair exchange for your behavior. Now remember, you've worked all this out with Mabel ahead of time. Maybe you've had this conversation, okay? And you've come to terms on how this is going to work, but your child is going to pay the babysitting fee one way or another for the behavior. Now the next time you're going to the Target, be like, boy, I hope I don't have to call Mabel today. Oh, I don't like Mabel, she's mean. Yeah, I know. That's why I called her. It's one idea, right? But start being proactive and thinking ahead and planning ahead, looking for a chance to discipline. One other thing for your anxiety is describing what you will do. When you have a situation where you need to deal with your child's behavior, you can tell them what to do, or you can describe what you will do. Let's watch a video where Dr. Fay kind of gives us a little bit better explanation of that.
Hi, I'm Dr. Charles Fay of the Love and Logic Institute. Parents, is it really possible to raise well-behaved kids who are happy at the same time? And the answer is absolutely, as long as we can maintain balance. See, many of us fall into the trap of providing a lot of good discipline and solid limits without the love. And others of us fall into the trap of providing lots of love, but not very many limits, not much discipline. There has to be a balance. That's what Love and Logic is all about. Being powerful in the kids' eyes and doing it in a very warm and loving way. For example, we know that kids need limits. And a simple trick of setting effective ones involves describing what you're going to do rather than trying to tell the kid what to do. So I might say to my young child, feel free to keep the toys that you pick up. And if they don't pick up their toys, I might have to keep them myself, at least for a period of time. Or with my teenager, I might, instead of saying, you have to drive safely and giving a big lecture, I might try something like, well, you're more than welcome to drive the car as long as you've made a deposit equal to the insurance deductible into my account. See, don't make driving free, by the way. Teenagers do not fear death, but they do fear financial loss. So that's the limits part of it. Now, the other end of this has to do with how do we do this without losing their love? And that comes down to empathy. Remember that word? When you hear Love and Logic, you think empathy. See, when the kid, I've had to pick up their toys, and now they're asking, where are my toys? I gotta show them my love. Oh, buddy, I love you. Oh, did you pick those up? Well, I don't know. Oh, buddy, and remember the toys that you pick up, you get to keep. Well, when do I get it back? Well, if you'd like some ideas about how you can earn those back, I'd be more than happy to help you. And do you see that I'm being loving while at the same time providing discipline so that I can have a child who grows to be happy and responsible at the same time? Or maybe my teenager has bumped up the car And I can come to them when I'm calmed down and say, oh, I love you so much and I was so worried about you, but thank goodness you're okay. The only problem is how are you going to pay for the damage? And again, that love and that discipline at the same time. You know, when I really think about it, way more important than getting our kids to behave is really teaching them how to get themselves to behave. And that's the heart of Love and Logic. Creating kids who have a little voice inside of their head that's constantly asking, how is this next decision I'm about to make going to work out? Well, we wish you great success with your parenting. And remember, you don't have to be a perfect parent to raise great kids. You just need the right amount of love and logic.
Okay, so describing, as I just wrap up that video, just describing what I'm going to do helps me manage my anxiety, and it also communicates firm limits to my child because I can't change their behavior. I can only change my behavior. But if I communicate to my child what I'm going to do, now they know where the limits are. I want to just give you a minute or two here to see, just what are some of the few ideas you came up with today. Share them with somebody right by you there before we kind of finally wrap up here. I really hope that as you go today, you'll be able to take this and go home and maybe share this with a friend. Maybe you'll be able to say, hey, I went to this thing on Saturday morning and I got this one idea and I'm going to try it. Let me tell you how it's working out. Or maybe you've got a spouse who's not here and you're able to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'd like to have you join me in that. Or whatever the case, if you're watching this video after the fact, if you're watching this recording, I hope that you find somebody that you can share this with and have a conversation that says, here's how I'm going to apply some of this stuff. What can we do together to support each other through that, have some accountability? I wanted to give a little time for question and response, but I respect your time, and we're just at the end of our time here. I have one last final thought video to show with you, a very short one. But what I'm going to say is this, if you have questions, if you've got specific situations you want to talk about, I will stay here with you until you're ready to go. But if after we do this next video, if you're ready to go, you can just leave. If you want to stay for the question response, that is up to you. But final thought here. AJ, can I ask you to jump up one more time? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And just get the volume on this last one. It's another little quiet one.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things so far tonight. But wouldn't it be great, though? I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was some magical thing you could do that would actually, you could do as a parent that would prevent most of the problems we've talked about tonight? Wouldn't that be great? Some like magical thing you could do. Guess what? There is one. Yeah, there's one very, very powerful way. Very, very powerful thing that you have that'll up the odds that your kids will do what you want them to do. Well, let's ask this question. How do you get a small child to do just about anything you want them to do? The answer, model it
with excitement and joy. Model it with excitement and joy. See, the wisest parents, what are they doing? They are constantly doing the things they want their kids to do when they know their kids are watching. But even more sophisticated parents add this little piece. They're constantly thinking out loud when they're doing these things. These kind of parents are constantly doing things like this. They don't say, hey, brush your teeth. What are these parents doing? They're saying, oh man, my breath stinks. I better go brush my teeth. And then they're saying, come on, man. You ever seen a mad dog? Come with me. The mad dog is a very fun thing to do with your kids brushing teeth. You know what the mad dog is, right? You get it all foamy. What else are they doing? Oh, man, better put my seatbelt on. Don't want to get my face all smashed up. Better drive safe, too. Better drive safe. Now, they're constantly slipping these little things in when the kid really doesn't look like they're paying attention. Because when do kids really copy what we're doing? When they think we're trying to teach them something, or when they think that we're just trying to not teach them something? I mean, when does it really happen? Yeah, when they think we're not trying to teach them something is when they copy it. Oh, what else are these parents doing? Well, they're saying things like, boy, you know what? I don't really like these vegetables, but I'm going to eat them because I want dessert. They're not saying a thing to the kid. Now that really stinks, doesn't it? Think about it. Doesn't it stink? This means that we actually have to behave.
If you model the behavior you want to see in your children, you're showing them what an adult looks like. And if you're doing that all the time, not just in discipline situations, but in all the little things, you're really showing them what it means to grow up. All right, that's all I've got for you today. But thanks for being here. Thanks for chatting with each other. Feel free, as I said, to stick around for Q&R here. But for sure, make sure you guys have time to talk with each other as you're walking out the door and support each other. Just take a second to look around the room and say, these people who are in the room, these are parents who are also looking for help, which means you guys can support each other. Be a part of a community together that walks through this journey